Everyone, welcome back to another episode here at Bulletproof Selling. My name is Sean Rhodes. I'm the Chief Sales Sergeant of Bulletproof Selling and Battlefield Selling, come to think about it these days. And I'm author of the book Bulletproof Selling, a guide for systemizing sales on the battlefield of business. Now, here at Bulletproof Selling, at this podcast, for more than 130 episodes, maybe no 140th episode now, we have a mantra here that hope is not a sales strategy. And so we are here every single week, sometimes multiple times a week, to help you as a salesperson or as a sales leader remove hope from how you sell. And over the course of the last few years, we've been able to have on guests from all walks of life in sales, folks that have been leading international sales teams, folks that are best-selling authors, Hall of Fame speakers, and of course, people that are out there making sure that sales teams have the best people available. So as every one of these episodes, if you get to stick with us through the entire thing, we will address a topic that we find a lot of salespeople are over-reliant on hope with. And we build a system in these episodes. This is not just a casual conversation. I want you to leave here with something that you can use to remove hope from that area of how you sell, no matter the size of your team or the size of your goals. Now, across all of the episodes of Bulletproof Selling, we've been talking a lot about tactics in sales, how to develop better leads, how to make sure we're reaching out with compelling, value-driven statements, how to make sure that we're qualifying people correctly in those calls, driving the deal forward in a good way, providing value every step of the way, not just so we can sell more, but so that we can serve more. One issue, though, that we don't get to touch on a whole lot is for those sales leaders that are out there thinking to themselves, I'm expanding my team, or I'm about to lose some people. They're retiring. They're going to leave the team through attrition, which is pretty common in sales. Well, how do I make sure that I have the best people, the folks that are going to be aligned with my culture, the folks that are going to be systems driven in how they sell, the folks that are going to be coachable, so that I don't bring somebody on that is a high performer but refuses to adopt any of the things that we know make our company successful? Well, to help us solve that problem, it's my pleasure to welcome onto the show Mr. Dan Fantasia. He's the president of Treeline, Inc. and an expert in making sure that sales leaders find, recruit, hire, and retain the best salespeople. Dan, welcome, sir, to Bulletproof Selling.
Hey, Sean, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Happy to be here.
Oh, great, Dan. Well, first, got to find out about you, man. You've got a career in sales. I know that you didn't just, like start on as an 18-year-old, helping other sales leaders find and recruit and hire the best salespeople. Talk to us a little bit about the journey that you took through sales that ended you in this position where now you are that guy that helps find the best salespeople.
Yeah, that's a good question. I tell you this, it wasn't a straight road. As a matter of fact, many of the individuals that we represent, we specialize in the career advancement and recruitment of sales professionals. And many of them have also found a pretty, not a very straight road to their success in sales. But when I graduated college, I actually spent a year traveling the United States. And when I got back, I used my degree to get my first job. And at the time it was challenging to find, the right opportunity, but I got my foot in the door. I had a lot of success very quickly, and I decided that it was time to move on. So I went to a recruiting firm. And I bring this up because when I went to the recruiting firm, I wasn't looking to be a recruiter, right, Sean? I was looking to find my next sales role in at the time, a technology company. And the recruiting firm said to me, well, hold on a second. What about this? What about recruiting? And I was like, what is recruit? I have no idea what this even is. My parents didn't know. My friends didn't know. Anyway, great company, great culture, great CEO. They sold me on the opportunity, and I joined that firm. I was horrible at recruiting. I was not very good at it, mostly because I wasn't strong in my conviction. I wasn't taking leadership, and I was early in my career, so I couldn't really couldn't consult or add value to a person's next step. I turned the corner. I found a tremendous amount of success. I became the #1 producer. I became the youngest managing partner, and the model started to break down. So I decided to leave and start Treeline. And the goal there was to really focus on, changing lives. And since our inception in 2001, we've changed the lives of over 3,500 salespeople. And that's just helping them directly with our clients. That doesn't mention all the other people we just helped with their resumes and guidance and coaching and all kinds of great things. And so we got started in 2001, just before September 11th, fought through those challenging times. And ever since, we've just been on a real rocket ship ride, helping companies hire the best sales reps they possibly can.
And usually when a sales leader comes to you, They're in a position where they either know their team is going to be expanding, so they're going to have to hire new salespeople, or they're about to be losing some folks, through attrition. Company's going to poach them somewhere else, and so they have this need. Now, most of the time, a sales leader, because sales is a pretty aggressive, assertive type of an industry, I may think I kind of know what to do because I hired my team now. Right, I built these folks from scratch. I trained them. I put them here from the ground up. So I think I've got a pretty clear idea of what needs to happen. But where do you find sales leaders tend to be over reliant on hope in that process? They're going to find, retain, and train the best salespeople for their team.
Yeah, I think for most sales leaders, they rely on hope. They're hopeful that the way they used to recruit is going to work for them today. So in other words, the way they recruited a year ago, they're hopeful that that same system and process is going to work for them again as successfully today. Unfortunately, hope's not a strategy. And as a result, when the market changes, you need to adapt. And in order to adapt, you need to listen and gain and gather information so that you can pivot and you can move and you can change with the environment. So your strategy, literally a year ago, Sean, till now, probably isn't working as well as it once did.
And talk to me about some things that have changed in the last year. Let's say I'm a sales leader listening to this, and I'm thinking, well, I can kind of get your point because sales and industry changes pretty quickly. What are some big changes you've seen happen in the last year that could wreck my results in finding and retaining the right people?
Yeah, it's funny. So the market's changed, right? A year and a half ago, a year ago, it was just so hot, and you figured out it's hard to recruit, right? And it's hard to find top talent. But when you do find top talent would consider opportunities and potentially move. What's happening now is that as a seller or running a sales organization, you may have a few individuals that aren't selling as effectively in this particular economy. And so you might consider top grading. So you would come to a firm like ours and not only come to a firm like ours, but you would be looking to, upgrade or change your sales organization. And when you look to change that sales organization, you're looking to go to market. Well, as we find top sales candidates, what we're finding is that because the market has changed and the economy has changed, they're not taking risks. And because they're not taking risks, they're not considering different opportunities. So now all of a sudden you figure, wow, in the competitive market, it would be that much more challenging to find a top producer. But we're finding actually the opposite. Because the economy is tougher to sell in, top producers don't want to leave where they are to try or take a shot at another company, number one. And number two, they don't want to take the risk to find out that the environment they're going to is even harder to sell in. The ramp up is going to take them a year to figure out, and it's just not worth it. So most of them are staying put right now. And that's what makes this particular economy so much more challenging than it was a year and a half ago.
Now that's going to be difficult for any sales leader to be able to overcome. So I'm curious, if I stop relying on hope, it means I've got to then build out some kind of a process or a system to use. But if that process or system was built for a year and a half ago, when people were a lot more risk tolerant because they were coming out of COVID, I heard from more than one sales leader, Sean, I've got all this need. I could hire 20 salespeople today if they presented their resumes to me and it was a good fit. So what are you seeing the best sales leaders do in a way that helps overcome that risk intolerance? How do they mitigate that with sales professionals that don't want that year and a half of ramp up before they're profitable themselves?
Yeah, it's such a good question. One of the best things to do is, and sometimes companies do it, sometimes they don't. But get one of your successful sellers, interject them or add them to the process so they can speak about their own, successes and what they're finding to be successful or challenging. Because what the sales reps are looking for is they don't want to be sold on an opportunity. Do you know what I mean, Sean? They want to know what they're getting into. And the only way you can sustain a successful sales force is if you're realistic in the expectations as they come in. And when I say realistic about the expectations, I mean the average sales size, the sales cycle, the quota, the compensation structure. Because if any of those are deceiving and a person is struggling to hit their quota or they're struggling to make the income they're anticipating, what ends up happening is those people start considering opportunities. They'll leave your organization, and then you can't sustain the growth that you ultimately want. So expectations, have them meet with an individual contributor, have them understand what's happening in the market so they can make an educated decision on if this is the right opportunity for them or not.
Now, that's something you mentioned that is so profound in that whether my rep is not even part of my company yet, they're a potential new hire, or they've been here for 10, 20, 30 years, I can't ever stop educating them as a best practice. Because if they're not even here yet, they want to be educated, as you said, to the opportunity, the challenges, the things that we're seeing work well. But even if this rep has been here 20 years, if I stop educating them, if it's just a numbers driven game, they're going to leave, because why would anyone want to stick around in an environment like that? So let's build a sales system that can help any sales leader not only work education into how they hire, but make sure that it's something that continues long after that person is onboarded. In the military, Dan, every new sales system that we built carved a little more hope away from our operations. It meant we've got to bring more people home. So we loved our systems, loved updating them, making sure they were relevant, all the great things the military is known for doing. So in sales, it's the same thing. Every new system trims a little more hope away. Well, at Bulletproof Selling, because it's a military-based show, because, hey, I'm the chief sales sergeant, we use this acronym TRIM, TRIM, to build every new system. Now, the T element in TRIM is the trigger. If I'm a sales leader and I want to trigger this system where I'm using education as a way to recruit and retain my salespeople, where do I want to trigger this? Is it when I recognize a need, like there's a potential, position in my team coming open, or is this something that I'm doing long before I ever see the need to recruit a new salesperson?
I would be doing it long before, but that's difficult for leaders to do. And the reason why it becomes difficult for them to do is because even when they have a need, Sean, what we found is the most successful leaders take sales recruiting as their number one priority. And when you're trying to hit your numbers and you're trying to hit your goals and you have sales that are close to close and you're in pipeline, sometimes it's challenging to carve out the time to fill a vacant territory, right? And so when you are suggesting that not only carve out time to fill a vacant territory, but also recruit, constantly 12 months a year, it sounds great, but it's really hard to get folks to practice and to do it. And as a result, most of them are reactive in their search process, and so they come to us when they either have a open role or they're looking to grow, and that's when they're ready to turn on the jets and really start looking at top talent.
And they're already behind the power curve if they wait that long, it sounds like.
Oh yeah, I mean, once you and I both know this, once you're behind on your number, it's so hard to make it up, right? If you miss Q1 because you're down a territory and you haven't filled the role, you are pretty much down for that particular region for the rest of the year. The best sales leaders, they know this. They hire. They know who we are. When they're ready, they are on it immediately. We fill our average role in 30 days or less. We guarantee that we're going to introduce you to your first candidate in 3 days or less. Now, we're not going to place the first candidate in 3 days, but we want you to know how important it is to us to make sure that you find the right person and you find them quickly. If we're not sending you a person for 5 or 7 days, a week out, then what are we doing? And so when you work with our organization as a sales leader, you should expect urgency and accuracy. And we're going to push incredibly hard to find you those people very, very quickly so that you can fill those territories and make sure you stay ahead of your number, you hit your goals and quotas and budget by the end of this year, and you focus on the following year and continue to see growth.
So if I want to turn the burners on this process to your terminology there, absolutely hiring somebody like you is the way to do it. But I'm a sales leader and maybe I've got to convince my CEO that I really need to hire a firm like yours. But until then, it's really up to me to build that plan. What can I do as the R in TRIM, which is the repeatable process here? What are the 4 or 5 or 6 steps that I can begin doing as a sales leader that knows I'm going to need to recruit so that I've got those people lined up so they can talk about the challenges and the successes, so I can begin this education-based recruitment process? What are those 4 or 5 or 6 things that you'd recommend any leader do?
Well, the first thing right off the bat is you need to make sure you have the resources to recruit, right? So if you don't have the resources, well, let me take a step back. One of the questions you said, one of the things you mentioned is how to recruit. But what we really want to do is recruit top sales professionals, not just recruit,
Mm,
right? Because when you recruit, maybe your HR team or talent acquisition team, what they do is maybe they post jobs. And maybe what your pipeline looks like, Sean, is candidates that have applied to jobs. Maybe they're not working. So the first thing is, number one, you need to figure out how you recruit. Just like how do you build a territory, right? You need a recruiting staff or the resources to help you find top talent. And that means that there needs to be an outbound approach, right? An outbound approach to find top sales talent. And then there needs to be accountability, right? If there's no accountability, then how exactly are you finding this top talent? Because if you came to us, we wouldn't be posting a job to find the top talent. We're going to be reaching out and we're going to be
mm,
consulting with you on who you want to see: competitors, companies that have similar industries, verticals. Where have you found successes? What does your top salesperson look like? And then we'd go to market. The difference is we're going to hold our team accountable for their outreach, their connects, their interviews, their submissions, everything. So as a leader, number one, make sure you understand, what does recruiting mean to your organization? Does that mean posting a job? And if it means posting a job, are you getting average candidates? Are you getting, are you basically hiring the best of the worst? Because you're only getting, what you get through ads. So that's number one.
mm,
Number two, do you have a process for outreach? Can you reach the right target audience? Do your recruiters know who they should be recruiting from, who they should be recruiting for, and what companies they should target? And then lastly, is there accountability? Right? Is there
mm.
accountability for outreach? Is there accountability for interviews? Is there accountability for submissions? Because there is with our firm. And so you want to treat that recruiting firm just like you treat your sales organization. They have a patch. They need to get out and find net new business. And you want to make sure you hold them accountable, right? How many interviews should you have at the end of the first week and at the end of the first month? And if you're not finding the successes you want, then something's broken.
Now that's brilliant. So actually, to hold your recruiting firm or your recruiting team accountable the same way you would your sales staff, that's going to put a lot of HR people on notice. I can tell you that right now. And that's not a bad problem to have. So I'm curious then, as a final step in this, or maybe it's like something happens in between. How do I begin to capture those stories, those challenges, those educatable moments, so that when I do finally find that person that is top talent, that doesn't want to be sold on the opportunity, they want to be educated, that I've got those resources, or at least that salesperson to connect them with, identified? What does that step look like?
Yeah. So just so I have this, if I understand this correctly, you're saying in the final step, now the recruiting team has brought you top talent. You've moved them through the process. You've introduced them to one of your sales representatives. The candidate is now interested in your opportunity. And now the final step is to basically close them, lock them down for an opportunity. Is that right?
Through an educative means, yes, not just here's your compensation package. Doesn't that sound great? Because a smart salesperson is going to say, well, how long is it going to take me to actualize that compensation package? So I'm curious about how you would use education as a way to make sure that this top performing salesperson that you have on the hook actually gets reeled into the boat.
Yeah. So it doesn't happen. There's no shock and awe. The
Mm,
education starts happening on day one. The second you pick up the phone or do a call just like this, you should be educating them from day one right through to the close or the offer.
mm,
Education should be happening along the way. Every step of the way, you should be checking in, talking with the candidate, understanding what their concerns are, understanding what they feel their challenges may be, and listening to them about their own selfish needs and wants. Because throughout the process, you should be educating them on the technology, on your positioning in the market, on the culture, on the top sales reps and what they do to be successful, so that as you educate them through the process and set accurate expectations, when you have the discussion and the conversation around offer, it should have already been, the expectation should have already been set. You should have understood where they are in their lifestyle, where they need to be way before you get to this final step. So you're educating them along the way. And when I say educating, I mean you're educating them based on their needs, their questions, their wants, right? It's what's important to them, so that when you make the offer, it is the logical conclusion to the interview process. There should be no surprises. So ultimately, the candidate should say, this is everything we've discussed. The company sounds great. The culture sounds great. I see myself in this role. I'm looking to get started. And the next final question is, great, when? When do you want to start? And lastly, what's going to happen when you look to resign? When you look to resign, what is your company going to do? Are they going to try to keep you? This is a really competitive, tough type of market. They probably want to keep that person on board. So you want to lastly educate them on why it makes no sense to consider a counteroffer, and that if this is the right choice for them, make the decision, have confidence, take leadership when you walk in the door to resign.
So you've actually done something that I've never heard done in a recruiting firm. You've taken a basic sales process, but you've mirrored it for how we recruit top performing talent. As everything that you just mentioned, good salespeople should be doing to acquire new customers. And I love the way that you're applying it now to how do we locate, hire, and retain top talent. So if we've got the trigger element, making this repeatable, great couple of steps. The iron trim is making sure this is improvable. So this is where obviously we have to pivot as the market changes, as the economy changes, as sales candidates become more risk averse. How do I want to make sure that I'm improving this system so that it's as effective this quarter as it's going to be in the next quarter and the one after that? What do I do to improve?
Yeah, I think what companies can do to improve is, I mean, this is going to seem self-serving, but is get a different perspective. You know, many times, so our services, depending on which service you use, we have contingency services that don't cost anything unless you make a hire. But it is not uncommon for companies to reach out to us and just brainstorm. It doesn't cost anything to brainstorm. What's happening in the market? Assess our current interview strategy or interview process. What do you think we're doing right? What do you think we're doing wrong? Many times, if you don't get an outside perspective, sometimes the most basic, simplest, smallest details are overlooked. And so change becomes difficult because you're sitting around a table brainstorming with the same people that have been running the same process for the past 2 years. And so thinking outside of the box, reaching out to companies like ours, companies like yours, it is nice to have a different perspective. At least that's my point of view. A new perspective to give you different ideas, things that you may not have thought of in the past.
And I wouldn't say it's just nice. I'd say it's essential. This is something that we learned to do on the battlefield, where we would spend a lot of time making a plan, but before we then committed lives to this plan, to execute it, to roll out of the front gate and roll into a place like Fallujah, we would take the time to brainstorm with other people. We'd say, here's our plan. Now, where are the gaps? What do you see that could go wrong here? And I'd rather learn that in a planning session in a nice air-conditioned room than out there on the battlefield. So you're advising sales leaders do something very similar, to say, all right, take your plan, your process, run it by a peer, run it by a recruiting firm like yours, Dan, so that you could see, are we really executing in the way that other people are finding success? Or is it, like you said, just it's the way we've always done it, so we're just going to keep doing that until it breaks? Right. Well, that means you're going to lose revenue. You're going to lose the opportunity to serve more customers. So if I've got a great system in place now, the trigger, repeatable, improvable, the final element of this is M, measurable. And I know a lot of people that are considering using recruiting firms are going to be really interested in this one, because this is where the ROI comes in. Is the money I'm paying you really worthwhile? So if I'm a sales leader and I'm hiring using this process, as actually a process now, instead of just we're going to put the job posting on some website and just hope people respond to it. I'm using an outbound process now. What am I measuring? Am I measuring how fast I'm hiring a new salesperson? Am I measuring their productivity, their ROI inside of the first couple of months? Am I measuring the amount of outbound that I'm doing to get that salesperson? What are the things you recommend a good leader measures to make sure that their recruiting process is actually a better system than what they were doing before?
Yeah. First of all of the above.
Okay.
One is a lot of times people think that with speed, you don't have accuracy. It's not
Mm,
true. It's not true. What tends to happen is what really happens for most companies is they don't have they miss the recruiting process. Like they don't know how to get top talent. It just kind of falls on their lap. And that's pretty much their biggest error. There's no direct path to go get these people that you want on your team, these top producers. And so the things that you want to measure, like when you're working with our firm, companies are always surprised because within the first week, they're already looking at 3 or 4 people that are like, they're like, whoa, this is exactly what we're looking for. Right. Like, wow, this, but now what tends to shock them is maybe the compensation might be different, or maybe they're
mhm,
more expensive than they thought, or what have you, but they're learning as they go. But what's happening with these companies is they want to measure the quality of candidates that they get, right? So do they consider this an A candidate and someone that they want to interview? That's number one.
mhm,
That's important. Number two, they want speed. Like this should be happening in a week, right? If your recruiting team hasn't brought you anyone that's quality within the first 2 weeks, month, you are in trouble. You have got to think of a new strategy, or need to think about some kind of accountability. So quality,
mhm,
number one. Two, you need speed. If you're not seeing the people, how are you going to fill the territory fast enough? I mean, if you bring us on, and I'm saying that we move in 30 days, our average search takes 30 days. So if you're right now, you're in April and you try to filling a Q2 goal here. That means if I finish the search, you hire someone by the end of April, they're not going to stop till May, right? So maybe they start 2 weeks
mhm.
after the final. So that's May 15th. You're already halfway through Q2. If you start right now, today's
Yep.
April 1st. You know what I mean? So accuracy, urgency. I mean, you need to have speed. You need to be seeing good candidates. And then lastly, you need to have a systematic approach and process to interviewing. It's got to be well organized and a well organized machine. And everyone in the process needs to take it as seriously as you do. And if they don't, they shouldn't be in the process. So what does that
Mm,
process look like? How quickly? Again, that should move with speed. That should be a 2-week process maximum. And if everyone on board and part of that process is slowing that process down because they have other priorities that are not as important as this, then they shouldn't be part of the process. Everyone should be aware of how important this role is and what it's going to take to get them. So those are the 3 things I would say that are the greatest, measurables to being successful in hiring a top sales talent.
So this is something that we've probably needed to cover for a while on Bulletproof Selling, but we haven't. So thank you so much, Dan, for showing up to give us a way that we can systemize how we hire and recruit and retain top talent. For folks that are interested in getting deeper into your world, I know your firm does exactly this. So where do we find you? How do we connect with your firm? If I'm a sales leader out there, or maybe I'm a salesperson and I think I consider myself a top performer, but I'm not in the right seat right now. How do we get in touch with you?
Yeah, I would say you can go to our website, which is Treeline Inc. So treelineinc.com. If you fill out a contact us form, say, I want to talk to Dan Fantasia, I'll call you immediately. You can connect with me on LinkedIn at Dan Fantasia. Connect with us on LinkedIn at Treeline Inc. I mean, we're pretty much everywhere, but I think the website and LinkedIn is the ultimate way to get in touch with us.
Outstanding. Well, for those of you that are catching Dan on this live stream or on the podcast, make sure you take the time to go visit, get your name in there. If you're a salesperson that thinks, I think I'm a top performer, but let's actually measure it. Let's prove it. And I know Dan's company would be happy to have you. If you're a sales leader that needs that service, this is a pretty interesting process. If you haven't been able to tell so far, he's taken the sales process and applied it to recruiting, as it should have always been. But yet, it's the first time I've ever seen it done like that. So brilliant, brilliant work there, Dan. If you're catching us on YouTube, make sure you're subscribing to that YouTube channel. If you're listening on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, anywhere that podcasts can be found, leave us a review and let other salespeople know that hope no longer has to be part of their sales strategy. Dan, thanks for giving back to the sales community and the sales leaders listening today. Let's get out there, man. Let's make selling bulletproof.
Thank you.